So we heard a little bit about how exciting, right, kind of federal attention uplifting all that Maryland is doing around recovery-friendly workplaces. And so we are thrilled to have this panel of experts to talk about what is a recovery-friendly workplace, what are we doing in Maryland, and what sort of impact and difference is this making in our communities. So I want to just say hello to our wonderful panel members. Jim Bollinger from Empowering Freedom. Can you wave your hand? Casey oh yeah, very good. Yeah, let's applaud. Casey Tiefenwerth from the Maryland Department of Labor. And Stacey Ferrare coming from she's the Recovery Friendly Advisor at Western Maryland Consortium. A long way from here, from Western Maryland represent. There we go, we got some Western MD folks. So pioneered in New Hampshire, the recovery-friendly workplace model has expanded to over 30 states and was recently recognized as part of the federal government's agenda to strengthen whole-of-society responses to address the opioid epidemic. So Jim, Casey, and Stacey are going to explore the importance and the impact of recovery-friendly workplaces, and specifically how Maryland has developed and implemented this model. And then we're going to have an interactive discussion, ask some questions, and if there are questions that you have as audience members, we'll see how we do on time to make sure that we are getting all the information you need to empower how can recovery-friendly workplaces happen in your community. So with that, let's understand what we are talking about with recovery-friendly workplaces, and I'm going to turn it over to Jim.
Good morning. Thank you, Katie, and I would thank Honor Road Maryland for putting this together. It's a lot of hard work. This is a great conference, so can we give them a round of applause? All right, so I got my notes here because I get nervous and I forget things. Recovery-friendly workplaces. There we go. So I'm gonna start with some statistics because I'm a nerd and I like statistics and data. If there's no data, nothing to back it up, it doesn't exist, right? So substance use and mental health challenges in the workplace are widespread. In 2021, there was 26.9 million Americans aged 18 or older with a substance use disorder that were employed. Out of these, almost 21 million were employed full-time, right? Now, I don't really like the wording or the phrasing of this one, but I left it in here for a reason. 1 out of 5 U.S. adults live with mental health challenge. And this is mental illness, and I left this in there kind of, to show kind of where we are. Like, this is from the National Institute of Mental Health, right? And to the fact that they're calling it mental illness shows that we have a long way to go with stigma and recovery-friendly languaging, right? So, me, I'm a person in recovery from a lot of things, substance use, mental health challenges, obviously, but one of the most traumatizing and damaging one is my impact with the criminal justice system, right? My mental health challenges and my substance use disorder kept me in frequent contact with police, jails, probation, and that's something I still experience to this day. I still experience, like, I can put the drugs down and I can deal with my mental health challenges, but that criminal background follows me everywhere, right? So when we take into account people that are impacted by the criminal justice system, there's over 1.2 million people incarcerated in the U.S. at the end of 2022, and that's a huge number. But out of those people, thankfully, about 95% of those people will be released one day, right? And a large portion of those people will return to the workforce, right? In addition to these longer kind of chronic forms of recovery, we all experience shorter term, more acute forms of recovery, right? We all experience the death of a loved one. We all experience some type of situational depression that comes from time to time. And we need time to recover from that, right? And this is why it is so important for the recovery, for the workplace to be a supportive environment that kind of fosters that. All right, so what is a recovery-friendly workplace? The definition I like the most comes from Recovery Friendly PA, and I'm a little bit biased because I used to work for them. But recovery-friendly workplaces are businesses of any type, right? That could be, it could be this hotel, it could be a law firm or a peer support organization, any type of employer who is committed to making foundational changes in the way they hire, treat, and support staff living in or seeking recovery from substance use disorder or mental health challenges. And I add this because, like, I'm an advocate, adverse effects to the from the criminal justice system. I feel like that's a form of recovery that we don't talk enough about and isn't always emphasized enough, even in the recovery-friendly workplace space. So, recovery-friendly workplace is a business of any type which committed to foundational changes in the way they hire, treat, and support staff living in recovery or seeking recovery, right? So there's a few key components, right? So the first, supportive policies and practices, right? We want to have practices that are supportive and address substance use, mental health, and criminal justice challenges with empathy and compassion, compassionate support for those who are seeking help, right? We want to, as an employer, we want to provide or at least facilitate access to treatment and support services, different resources that are beneficial to people in recovery, right? Whether that can look like healthcare, not all healthcare pays for peer support, right? Maybe we would want to make it a point to seek out healthcare providers that pay and provide peer support to employees, right? I think employee assistance programs are great if employees know about them. I know I've had several employee EAP programs and I had no idea what they did. I didn't know how to access them, and I wasn't really 100% sure that they would maintain my confidentiality, right? So, for employers that may be too small or not able to provide an EAP system or want a different alternative, right? It's important to have community connections, right? We should have connections with resources in our neighborhood, RCOs. I think On Our Own Maryland is a great one, for places that we can refer people for peer support, right? In addition to that, if somebody is experiencing a mental health or substance use challenge, right, we want to make sure that they have a pathway back to work. We don't want to be punitive, right? We don't want to punish them for, if we experience substance use, I'm sorry, should have did that early. If we experience substance use, some type of problem related to substance use or mental health, right? Our jobs are very important. I know my job is very important to me in my recovery, and I think the loss of job, especially early on, would have been detrimental to my recovery at that point. So we want to make sure there's a pathway to return to work that's non-punitive. The second one, education and training. We want to have stigma reduction training, right? And, as the first slide showed, there's a long way to go, even for organizations that are in the mental health space. We want to educate employees and people in leadership positions about substance use disorder and the importance of reducing stigma, right? So we also want to have supervisor training, right? I think supervisors should be held to maybe not the same standards, but nearly the same standards of confidentiality that we are, right? If you go to your supervisor at work with a substance use or mental health concern, that should be covered under some kind of confidentiality, right? You should feel safe knowing that that's not going to be disseminated throughout the organization, right? So we want to emphasize confidentiality, and we also want to provide supervisors with the skills to recognize signs of mental health challenges or substance use challenges and be able to provide support and either refer or suggest assistance programs, right? And in order to refer or suggest programs, supervisors need to be made aware of what programs and what resources are available to them. So the next one, health and wellness programs, right? It's great. We would love to integrate holistic health initiatives into the workplace, right? Whatever that looks like, whether that's physical mental health programs, yoga, stress management workshops, mental health days are great. I think everybody should have a couple mental health days. Especially in this field, we should have more than others, I think. And I don't have to tell you the benefits of peer support programs, right? We need peer support programs. Like some models will say that there should be peer support within the workplace or, mentors or people in recovery in the workplace. I don't have any experience with that. And I'm I'm kind of on the fence of whether that should be a work thing or not. But at the very least, we should have, relationships with RCOs and organizations that are able to provide peer support outside the workplace. And, one of the most important ones, right, is the last one, flexibility and accommodation, right? We should have flexible scheduling, remote options if possible. There's no reason why we can't do a large portion of our work remotely. Flex days were huge. When I worked for Unity for Recovery-Friendly PA, we had limited PTO. And I'm still trying to sell my current employer on that. They're still not on board. And that can sound scary. But I mean, I think there's even data that shows, and I should have it somewhere, but if you're given unlimited PTO, I take a lot of vacations, right? I had unlimited PTO. I took 10 days last year, the exact number that I would have been given anyway. So I think that's a good thing. We should also make reasonable accommodations, right? We should be able to adjust employees' workloads or job duties to reduce stress or to support recovery, whether temporarily or permanently. So we talked a little bit about why recovery-friendly workplaces are needed. We talked about the prevalence in the workplace, but from a business point of view, substance use disorder and mental health have huge economics and social costs, right? Obviously there'll be the higher healthcare costs, lost productivity with unaddressed substance use, mental health concerns. I think one of the biggest ones for me, though, is the impact on community and well-being, right? Unaddressed mental health, substance use disorder, obviously, has huge, is that my timer? It has huge impacts on family and, family and the community. And if you're in a workplace that does not have supportive supportive policies and does not have a good culture, then, it's not going to be a very good workplace, good place to work, right? Went way too far. There we go, right here. So we talked about some of these already, the improved productivity, decreased absenteeism, increased staff retention. Anybody in a hiring position knows that it's much easier to keep an employee, an existing employee, than to find and train a new employee, right? So these are good points, good selling points for employers, right? Improve morale, health, and wellness. Just a better culture. If you're, I know we've probably all had jobs that have not had good workplace culture, and it's draining. I know my girlfriend's going through it now. She comes home and complains about what goes on at work all the time, right? And for that to carry, we spend too much time at work for it to carry over into our personal life. Did I miss one? RFW is recovery-friendly workplace. I'm sorry, maybe I should have put that on the slide. Yeah. All right, so another benefits are decreased healthcare premiums and higher recruitment outcomes, right? I have some more data. So the National Safety Council reveals that hiring workers in recovery is beneficial for employers. Employers in work will save, not spend, but save an average of $8,500 in annual costs related to absenteeism, productivity, healthcare utilization, and workers' compensation. They will avoid over $4,000 in turnover and replacement costs. And workers in recovery tend to stay in jobs longer, are less likely to be hospitalized, and have fewer primary care visits, right? And I'm very biased because I'm a person in recovery, but I think a lot of times we're better employees overall. Like, we're actually working on stuff. We're proactive about our health. We're better in a workplace environment. So real quick, the goals of recovery-friendly workplace certification. We want to be able to respond more effectively to substance use, mental health, and justice-impacted needs in the workplace. We want to build workforces through the hiring of people in recovery, returning citizens. And this can look like reducing some of the barriers, right? Maybe we don't need the drug test, right? Like, my job right now, one of the requirements is a driver's license, right? And that's something that would have affected me early on in my recovery. I don't drive anywhere. Like, I'm at this conference now, but my job, I take the train to work and I work in an office, right? Like, that's not a necessary thing. So maybe examine some of those policies and see if that's something we can remove. Maybe we don't need a background check. And we also want to foster a supportive workplace culture by reducing stigma, using recovery-friendly language, and making employers be more outspoken and visible about supporting recovery, right? We can say, if we support recovery, but we don't tell people and nobody knows we support recovery, it really doesn't do anything. We mentioned confidentiality and, just being empathetic. Like I said earlier, employees give a large portion of their lives to their employers, and employers have a responsibility. This isn't a bonus that the employers are giving you. Employers have a responsibility to look out for your mental health and well-being, right? So in conclusion, these policies are great, but they're not just for people in recovery. They're just basically supportive policies that every workplace could benefit from. With Gen Z entering the workforce, their values, expectations, and priorities are much different from some of the older members, boomers and Gen Z. Gen X, right? There's much more of a focus on mental health and life-work balance than they had when I was entering the workforce. So it's kind of one of the trends anyway. So it's really a no-brainer to kind of get on board now. So that's all that I got right now. I'll challenge everybody in here, if you're in a leadership role, these two ladies will be telling you about how you can become recovery friendly in Maryland. And if you're not in a leadership role, you can still advocate for recovery friendly policies in your workplace. And thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Jim. You did a fantastic job of describing what recovery-friendly workplaces are and how they operate. And before we get started, I've got a couple of questions for the audience. Is the concept of recovery-friendly workplaces new to you? Is this the first time you're hearing about recovery-friendly workplaces? You can raise your hand. Excellent. Okay. And the reason that I ask that is because this term, this phrase really has been gaining quite a bit of momentum over the last couple of years. And some folks have been exposed to it just by the nature of it, getting some attention at the federal level. We've got partner states that are working on this. And for some people, even though they are either working at places that are recovery friendly, or they're in a leadership position at workplaces that are recovery friendly, they've never thought about this before, and how they can really solidify that status for themselves. I guess my second question for you all, and this is maybe a question for Katie as well as those of you who have been to this conference before, has the Maryland Department of Labor ever spoken at one of these conferences? Don't know. Is it a surprise to anybody that the Maryland Department of Labor is here talking about recovery-friendly workplaces? Just, is sort of like, why? A great surprise. So why is the Department of Labor here, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit about Maryland's model, which, yes, to everything Jim said. And then Maryland's model does operate a little bit differently from what you might expect to see in other states. So just to give you a sense of, we always like to talk about our funding. Where did our funding originate from? So just to give you a sense of, who supports this. So Maryland's Recovery Friendly Workplace Pilot Program is operated by the Maryland Department of Labor within the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. We received roughly $440,000 from the Behavioral Health Administration. You all heard from Deputy Secretary Lord earlier, from the Behavioral Health Administration through SAMHSA. So you may be familiar with state opioid response funding. That is what funds our current program as it looks today. And we are eagerly hoping to continue that under future SOAR funding or other opportunities that might present themselves. Okay. So in Maryland, we are a little bit different from other states who have taken what we like to sort of call an all or nothing approach, where you are either designated as a recovery-friendly workplace or you are not. And there are certain benchmarks that you have to hit in order to get that designation. In Maryland, what we decided to do, and this was through a series of policy development sessions, hearing from employers that have participated in similar initiatives or in recovery-friendly workplaces in other states, what the employers were actually looking for was a tiered model, something that would allow them to have a low barrier to entry, right? We talk about this with individuals, meeting people where they're at. Businesses want to be met in the same way. Maybe they're just exploring, maybe they're just trying to get a sense of, is this a good fit for me or is it not? And we wanted to give them an opportunity to acknowledge that even taking that first step of exploring this is important. And then we also wanted to give them the opportunity to grow and to progress with their tiered designation. So as you can see up here, this is just an image of what our medals or our badges for businesses look like, but they can be designated at a bronze through platinum level. So bronze, silver, gold, and platinum, with platinum meaning that they have done all of the sort of required activities that I'll talk about in a moment, and with bronze being that they are taking that first step towards progressing. We never think of bronze as a stopping place. We think of bronze as a foot in the door, and then let's help you move and progress. So a quick mention of our recovery-friendly advisors, and I'm so excited to be joined by Stacey, who is our RFA, or our recovery-friendly advisor in Western Maryland. All of our subgrantees, and at this point we've got 3. We have Western Maryland Consortium, which is the local workforce area in the western part of the state. We have Susquehanna Workforce Network, which oversees Harford and Cecil counties in the northeast part of the state. And then we have St. Mary's County Health Department that is also a subgrantee that's helping us to get a sense of what this looks like to roll out in a health department setting versus through a local workforce area. But each of our subgrantees, the funding that they receive from us goes towards the staffing of this program. And that means hiring or designating somebody that's already on staff as the recovery-friendly advisor. This person is, in Maryland, also this is unique in that we require our recovery-friendly advisors to be certified peer recovery specialists. They have to have that designation within 6 months of hire, and that was a very intentional choice. We wanted somebody that can model that lived experience to businesses, that can connect with individuals on that level, and who is an expert in their region's local recovery community. And so the recovery-friendly advisor really serves several different purposes. They're a guide to help businesses through the designation process. They're a resource broker. We all know, if we're peers, we all know the term resource broker, where they're helping employees who may want additional support, or they're helping businesses connect to resources. As I mentioned, they're all experts in their area's local recovery community and can really help to facilitate connections to what's happening in the local community, whether it's for individuals or perhaps businesses that want to get more involved. And then they're also an accountability partner. I mentioned earlier that we want to see businesses progress through these tiers. And so the RFA really serves to help give the business a sense of where they are, what they have yet to do, and to celebrate them once they accomplish it. Whoops. All right, so in Maryland, we have 4 key activity areas, and Jim actually described these really well, which I'm glad that you mentioned it, coming from Pennsylvania and talking about recovery-friendly Pennsylvania. What you'll hear is that there is consistency in these activity areas across states and jurisdictions that roll out this model. And in fact, the the U.S. Department of Labor for their Recovery Ready Workplace Toolkit, which was released in November of 2023, actually outlines these very clearly. And so we benefited when we were building Maryland's model to really take what was mentioned in that toolkit as a best practice and incorporate it into our model. So if you go online, if you look up that federal toolkit, you'll see these activity areas spelled out very clearly. But for us, there are 4 activity areas, the first of which really starts with this idea of contributing to ongoing data collection. And I like this representation. This actually came from my colleague and friend, Casey Saylor, who some of you may know, who is not here with us today, but has been an incredible asset to the development of this program. And I love the way that she describes this. But our model and the way that you progress is really a sort of choose your own adventure. It's a pie, if you will. You start with the first piece of that pie, which is contributing to this ongoing data collection, and I'll go into the details of that in a moment. And then from there, you can decide as a business, as an employer, what is most important or most needed for you. And your recovery-friendly advisor will help walk you through that process of completing that activity area and getting the subsequent designation. But to get started at our bronze level, we have all businesses start at this place of contributing to data. They do this through a couple of different specific steps, including reviewing results from the National Safety Council's substance use and mental health cost calculators, which really just give the business a sense of what are the annual costs that you're incurring by not addressing substance use and mental health in the workplace. I can give you sort of a quick snapshot that for a small business of 1 to 50 employees in the social services sector in Maryland, by not addressing substance use, it costs on average $30,000 a year for the business. That's $30,000 a year that just by making a couple of easy and free changes to your business model, your policies, the way that you present training to your employees, you could recoup those costs at the end of the year. So in addition to those cost calculators, we have businesses complete a questionnaire. They meet with their recovery-friendly advisor to learn a little bit more about what the designations look like and how to achieve them. And then we ask them to send a declaration of commitment to their employees, really just naming that this is something that they're going to be participating in. So then we can have the employees hold the business to what they committed to doing. So we've got the accountability partner and the recovery-friendly advisor, but then employees can also hold their employers once they get that declaration of commitment. Hey, I saw you send this a couple months ago that you're going to be doing some training on recovery-friendly workplaces. I haven't seen anything come through. Is that still happening? That's what we want to hear. We want employees to feel empowered to be able to ask more and to get more information. There is a recertification process that happens annually. For the bronze designation, this is simply to complete that questionnaire again and then to meet with their recovery-friendly advisor. The second activity area, which again, if we're thinking about this as a pie, this may be the second area of interest that a business identifies, or this might be something that they decide to do a little bit later. But I would say what we've heard predominantly from businesses that have been involved thus far, they really want to receive naloxone administration and overdose response training. So this is usually going to be the next step that we hear from employers of what they're interested in. But to meet this designation, you have to have staff training on naloxone response, on overdose response and naloxone administration, and then you have to keep naloxone on site and available to employees in one location. There was, I think, recent legislation passed around having naloxone co-located with AEDs. This is something that is very much aligned with this piece of the recovery-friendly model. If you get trained on how to administer naloxone and how to respond to an overdose, we then expect you to make sure that you have naloxone readily accessible on site for your employees if your employees aren't then encouraged to carry it themselves. And that in order to recertify, you must make sure that that naloxone is replaced if it's out of stock or expired, and then to offer a refresher class to staff. The next activity area or place where businesses can increase or advance their designation is around offering stigma-reducing programming in the workplace. I can tell you one of the most sought after, one of the programs that businesses are most interested in is On Our Own's Stigma, I think 101. Yeah, in our work and our lives. So that's one of the ones that we have hosted for businesses. So again, we're not looking to recreate the wheel here. We're looking to see what's already being offered across the state and bring it into workplaces, bring it into spaces, these sort of non-traditional spaces where we might not be talking about these things, or we might not be doing it in a way that feels welcoming to staff. So as part of this programming, we're asking that businesses post information for employees that has available resources, that they provide education on the company's substance use policies or how to seek help for substance use or mental distress, and that the business or that the employees understand what their benefits are. It's not buried in a manual or a handbook. It's pulled out for them so they can easily see, is there a return to work policy? Is there health benefits that cover if I need to go into treatment? Will my job be safe when I come back? Is this going to be covered by my insurance? We want to make sure that employees have access to that information easily. And then as part of this, we also ask that businesses provide education to managers and supervisors on topics around effective communication. I think a really easy place to start, and Jim mentioned this, is just recovery language, making sure that we're using person-first, recovery-friendly, appropriate language in the workplace, and that we're not squashing these conversations, that we're creating spaces for people to feel empowered to talk about these things. We also encourage education around linkages to care and then provisions under the ADA. This is something that we're working on right now. We're working on putting together a presentation for employers that very clearly explains what ADA accommodations are available for people in recovery to take some of the guesswork out, because we've heard employers feel like this is something that they're not 100% sure how to navigate or talk about, and quite frankly, that they find a little scary. And then, To recertify annually, we just ask that they remind staff about these available benefits and how to seek help. Sorry, I think I might have skipped one. There we go. That they remind staff about the available benefits and how to seek help, and that they, if they've made any changes to their benefits offerings, that the recovery-friendly advisor has access to that. Okay, the final activity area, and then we'll get to questions and talking. But as Jen mentioned, it is really important that recovery-friendly workplace models weave in discussions around changing policies and practices to make recovery workplaces stick and to make them sustainable within workplaces. We can offer training a couple times a year. We can do away with work happy hours, but if we don't have policies that codify the importance of recovery-friendly practices in the workplace, it's not going to stick. The minute your leader turns over, the minute staff turns over, that institutional knowledge and that care could leave. And so we really want to make sure that businesses that participate in this recognize that for them to get that platinum status, they have to do everything that I just mentioned, and they have to make sure that their policies are aligned with recovery-friendly practices. In order to meet this, they have to identify an individual or a team who is really going to be kind of tasked with being the liaison to address recovery and mental health. That might just be somebody who stays in close contact with Stacey so that Stacey can say, you know, hey, we've got a list of recovery events happening in the community. Could you post this on your workplace's intranet or something so that folks can access it easily? We ask that as part of this, businesses work with the recovery-friendly advisor to review their benefits and resources, that they establish policies that address substance use as a health condition, and look at their current policies to make sure that those policies are aligned with addressing substance use as a health condition, and then that they offer employees who are in treatment or recovery reasonable accommodations as appropriate. I get a lot of questions around what this means. What do reasonable accommodations mean in terms of recovery-friendly workplaces from businesses? This is something that, quite frankly, scares businesses a little bit. One of the examples that we lead with, which is fairly easy to do, is, you know, if you can allow for flexible scheduling so that somebody maybe can, get their medication for opioid use disorder in the morning, or maybe they can attend a meeting in the afternoon, that's a reasonable accommodation. And not only is that going to benefit the person that's in recovery, but that's going to benefit the single mom who maybe needs to come in a little bit later because her child care doesn't start until 8:30 and she needs to drop her child off. She doesn't have to be the one to say that I'm in recovery and I need this accommodation. It just benefits everybody, right? A rising tide raises all ships. So to recertify annually here, we just ask that businesses provide updated contact information for that person. Again, knowing there is turnover, we want to make sure from year to year, if our contact left at the business, that we have a new one. And then we also ask that they provide, again, that summary of related benefits and complete our readiness questionnaire so we can see what's changed from year to year. All right, thank you.
Jim and Casey, thank you so much. That was a really incredible overview. And it's not lost on me that this idea that Maryland has about implementation of doing it in tiers is very stages of change model, right? Like, where are you in the thought of recovery-friendly workplace? Are you contemplating? Are you exploring? Are you preparing? Are you putting into action? Or maybe are you in that recovery phase where you're platinum level, you are looking at sustaining this beyond the current into the future? So truly, truly amazing. I also want to say I so appreciate the sort of concrete examples you gave about a little policy, a practice language, how that communicates, you know, what we believe here at this organization, or how we understand the importance of work to our whole lives. And thinking about when we make work accessible for people in recovery, we make it accessible for everyone. Right? Like, accessibility should be our foundation. That should be our baseline, that we have an accessible system, because when we create that ability, everyone can grow. Everyone can grow and everyone can bloom. All right, what are some of the questions that I wanted to ask? One of them was about, the idea of if I was just a business person and I was like, give me the facts and the numbers. You have done an amazing job illustrating the cost and the benefit for folks who maybe are not so sure about all this touchy-feely feeling stuff, but who really are thinking about retention, right, recruitment, and that those lost, savings opportunities. So I do want to ask, especially since the pandemic, I think we have seen a lot of workplaces, being a crisis can also be an opportunity, and it can also create some growth. So really thinking about those flexibility policies, and it intersects with the use of technology, a multi-generational workforce. Jimmy talked about that a bit. And I think in line with some of our speakers this morning, like the importance of making sure that we are equitable, accessible, diverse, and inclusive in our workplace policies. So I want to ask, what are some of the small things that you've seen businesses put into place that has had a return, like had a harvest so much bigger, like a little bit of effort with a big impact? What are some of the things you've seen in terms of a successful recovery-friendly workplace?
Well, I mean, like you mentioned before, like with the pandemic, right? Like things changed with the pandemic. I mean, I think even with people, anybody that goes to 12-step meetings knows that like we kind of changed the whole culture, right? So just the implementation of Zoom and how it's more readily available and accessible to more people is huge. I worked in jobs before that, like, not everywhere can work remotely, but I think, it's much more accepted that remote work is a thing. And, I personally, I go to therapy in the middle of the day, right? Because not all, the therapists don't have a million appointments outside of working hours, right? So, just to have an employer that is supportive of that. And, I think everybody, since the pandemic, there's been more of a focus on mental health anyway. I think everybody kind of went through a little something at that point. Some more than others, but I think that isolation and everything kind of shined a light on the need for mental health, more supportive mental health policies across the board. So.
Stacey, can I direct a question at you?
Sure.
So in your work as an advisor, we know that for sure stigmatizing attitudes and assumptions about people who are experiencing mental health or substance use challenges or journeys, sometimes it's not spoken, it's sort of underneath. It's like underneath a policy or underneath an interaction, it's an assumption. Has it been difficult to have really honest conversations with workplaces about stigma, about recovery? What's been the reaction that you've experienced?
So I'll be honest, initially we were taking it from the approach of bringing people who were in the recovery continuum and welcoming them or introducing them to your workplace. And then somewhere along the timeline, we started adopting some of the federal approach and toolkits where we started, as Casey mentioned, we were using the substance use cost calculators, mental health cost calculators, and focusing on your current workforce. And that seemed to change that momentum in a huge way. So in the beginning, I was getting a little resistance just on exactly what the state of Maryland was asking employers to do. As soon as we were able to kind of flip the perspective and start focusing on the current workforce, that took down a lot of walls, I would say. In addition to that, we started looking at ourselves, so the Western Maryland Consortium, and how could we implement these practices or actually take that posture in our community to become champions for our own community and then talk about some of the pain points that we experienced along the way. So I'm proud to say that the Western Maryland Consortium has walked through the pain points, and I shouldn't say pain points, we walked through the process. And so we learned how to help businesses because it did seem like a daunting task until you started walking through them yourselves. And so it, like I said, changed the momentum and then gave other people within the employer community and a sense that it wasn't as much of an ask as it felt from in the beginning.
It speaks very much to sort of one step at a time, one day at a time, right? Absolutely.
Can I add something quickly? Just in early conversations too, I remember meeting with a business right when we were first launching this, and I was sitting down. We had the leaders of this business, so we had the CEO, we had the head of HR, we had basically their management team sitting in a room together. You know, they're watching me do my presentation on recovery-friendly workplaces, and I start talking about the prevalence of substance use and mental health challenges across the country. And one of the women that was in the room, you know, they spend every day together, right? They're on the management team. I'm sure they see each other quite a bit. One of the women, you know, kind of raised her hand and shared a story about a loved one of hers who was impacted by substance use, and what a toll it took on her as an employee, feeling like she had to sort of, you know, deal with her personal life and then check it out the door, and then come into work and kind of pretend as if she hadn't been on the phone with treatment providers all morning, seeing if anybody had a bed available. And I watched the rest of the room look at her, and sort of one of the women that was in the room said, "Oh God, I didn't know that." And just that conversation alone, I mean, it was a, I don't know, 15-second maybe mention of this. And then, you know, we moved on, kind of gave everybody the space to process that. Just that conversation opened, you could see that it just kind of opened the door and the interest to the other people in the room that, like, oh, I'm not just talking about my frontline employees here. This affects my colleague and my friend who's sitting across the table. So just even having that conversation, that very initial, you know, step in the door, that data collection, if you will, from Maryland, opened the eyes to the other people in the room that, like, wow, this really is an issue. This really is something that the people I'm working closely with, that I'm working next to every day, are having to deal with, and then I'm maybe unnecessarily making them check it at the door because of work, because of the sake of work and how we work in the United States.
Amazing. Amazing. That is holistic. I see the hands in the air, and I want to keep to our time schedule. So I want to maybe bring our panel to a close with a conversation. But during lunch, please, like, ask questions, have these conversations at your tables. Who's a recovery-friendly workplace in our community? Like, how do we get involved with that? What is your company doing around flexible leave time, or making sure health insurance benefits are available? Or I love that idea about supervisors, training for supervisors. What do you do if someone comes to you and says, I'm having a mental health or substance use challenge? Like, do you know what reasonable accommodations are? What training is needed? And how can everyone in this room, maybe who's been through it and can say, this is what helped me, this is what harmed me, this was an easy way that my path could have been more clear. But I do want to speak to what you were just saying about this is, right, everyone, we are all impacted. Recovery-friendly workplaces are part of local communities. And so can any of you give a good example of how a workplace thinking about recovery, being open about recovery, what that maybe has done to bridge the connection between work and the recovery community or community life?
Well, I mean, I can talk about my experience at, like, I worked for Unity Recovery. They're the people that have recovery-friendly PA, right? And they, you know, they model, and not only do we preach recovery-friendly workplace, but you know, we can't talk about it and not have those things, like, implemented in our workplace, right? So I've never had a job that was that open and free with the, flex time or whatever. An employee that's properly supported, and we all have, like, this is why I said it doesn't really have to be specific to recovery, right? It doesn't have to be a 12-step meeting. What you mentioned, like, mothers need to take care of their kids, right? If you have a sick kid at home, you're not really fully present while you're in the workplace anyway, right? And you're not working to your full potential, right? So, with it's minimal thing to just kind of be like, hey, go take care of what you have to take care of and then come back, right? Employees are more loyal. I know I was always, employees are more loyal, and they're more willing to, like, kind of go out of their way and do what they're supposed to do. I've been in jobs where people are like, forget this place. I'm not really, I don't care what happens here, and do, like, deliberately destructive and disruptive things in the workplace, right? And I find that when we support our employees and we take care of their needs, they don't, that attitude's not there. I mean, I had unlimited PTO, and I take a lot of vacations, right? And I can tell you, I took exactly 10 days. Nobody in the company abused it. And I know this is a hard sell. I'm still trying to sell it to my job now, but it's a hard sell. But, like, people, when you entrust people with the responsibility to take care of it, and give them, like, we hire these people, right? We hire people for a reason because we think they're good employees. Hopefully we think they're the best, right? So, it's important to show them that we trust them, right? If you hire people, trust your decisions, right? We bring all these people in because they have a certain set of skills and they're good at what they do, and we need to trust them to do just that, I think it's a hard sell to a lot of employers. It's a huge cultural shift. So, but the benefits are definitely outweigh any type of change. Also, there's definitely a need for more updated data. I like what you mentioned about sharing data across the board or whatever. We need more concrete data. Outcomes and what works and be able to prove it. Because it's easy to go to an employer and be like, yeah, it's decreased absenteeism and, improved productivity and all that. But it's hard to like kind of quantify that and to show that in like an immediate kind of way. So, but yeah, I like work that everybody's doing. So, yeah.
Perfect. Stacey, you want to bring us home?
Yeah, if I could just add, Casey mentioned the leave your work at the door, and I really look at, as a person in long-term recovery, I begged to be on this pilot project because it's an education project. It's changing the narrative of the workplace. And, I grew up, I'm kind of in the middle of that, where initially it was, you don't talk about your problems when you walk in the door. And so when you talk about changing the narrative in a community or even across the United States, within the state of Maryland, however you look at it, I think that language needs to be changed. And we have taken approach. A lot of businesses are already doing many of the asks. They're just not taking credit for that. They're not using the language that we are. So Casey Saylor at the Department of Behavioral Health talked about low-hanging fruit. And so we started identifying businesses in our area, a lot of health departments, a lot of behavioral health. They're already employing people in recovery with mental health issues. They have policies in place. They just don't advertise them. So putting the language and that sticker on your front door, kind of does. We put it on our website, so that way it's changing the language. People start using that as a household name and stop checking things at the door, because the reality is we're all human. We're all going through things, and the more I know, some of the things that led to my addiction or side of life was the fact that I had to compartmentalize everything, and I was pretending to be something in every area. So the more I was able to open up that narrative, I've seen that in so many forums where, we're all human. We're all going through some stuff, but we have to pretend like we're not once we get to work. And that's what I see the recovery-friendly workplace kind of opening the door and allowing you to nurture that side of your world, because it all integrates in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Amazing, truly amazing. I had a wonderful supervisor a couple of years ago when we were starting the Consumer Quality Team of Maryland who said, your employees will never treat anyone that they support better than they feel that they are being treated. And so knowing that, like you said, if you are welcoming people into your community of work, are we treating each other well? Are we acting in the spirit of mutuality where we are giving and we are getting? And that is the cycle that continues our own growth and our own blooming. And let's share it. Let's be open. Let's let people know, like, this is what work should look like. And if we want to move forward into a sustainable, enjoyable, joyful, supportive, healing world, we need to make work an integrated part of health. Can we give a big round of applause for our panelists, please? Thank you so much, Casey and Jim and Stacey. Please ask questions of them at work. We'll make our way off the stage and we'll invite, just one sec. Oh, we'll get a great picture.
Thank you.
You shared the picture, but she sent it to you? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't need that.
Realized as I was writing. I
just brought it in case. My worst fear was in case you show up and
All right, folks, as we're coming. So we have talked a lot about history. We have talked a lot about building places where we can plant new ideas, where we can nurture them and grow them. And so our close-out presentation for day 2, I'm so excited to welcome 2 amazing people to the stage who are working with young folks, with young adults, to create empowerment and opportunity, to look at environmental justice and healing in our communities with some really innovative model. So I'd like to welcome up Marvin Hayes, who is the founder and executive director of the Baltimore Compost Collective. Yes. He is a seasoned master composter with over 20 years of experience in youth programming and mentorship. Now, together with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, he founded the Baltimore Compost Collective in 2015. Today, they serve over 300 customers in Baltimore City and process close to 1,500 pounds of organic material every week, to create BCC's Black Gold Compost. Through education and empowerment, BCC envisions a future where composting empowers young people, fosters community, and moves Baltimore closer to zero waste. And then interviewing Marvin today is going to be our wonderful TAY coordinator, Chris Locus. Chris Locus with Honor of Maryland. They lead our transitional age youth outreach project, where they coordinate high quality training and technical assistance for youth serving organizations, organize young adult peer-to-peer networking, mentorship, and leadership development, and they represent Honor of Maryland young adults and the peer perspective on local, regional, and state level policy and planning initiatives. Chris and Marvin, thank you so much for being with us today. We're so excited for your conversation.
Hello, hello. I am so excited to be able to facilitate this conversation. When Katie gave that amazing introduction about the beautiful work that Marvin does, I cannot be more grateful that we're able to sit here and learn from this amazing initiative. So let's go from the top. Can you start by introducing yourself a bit more and talking a bit more about your initiative?
Excellent. Greetings, everyone. Would give you sending compost love from Recycle Baltimore, South Baltimore, the amazing Filbert Street Garden, and the Wakanda of South Baltimore. Would like to give greetings to my ancestors. First and foremost, my grandmother. My family grew up here in Chestertown, in Eastern Shore. And as I remember stories from my grandmother, we weren't allowed to be in Ocean City. And now her grandson has the opportunity to spread some, almost have the opportunity to spread some compost love with you guys. First and foremost, would like to thank Jennifer for thinking outside of the box and sending you a bunch of composting love to understand how getting into the garden and making compost and creating soil enhancer for residents that are in a food apartheid, food insecure neighborhood is important, and how it relates to mental health services and how much therapy happens inside of gardens. But before I get started, I have to make a disclaimer. I know you guys, some people I see are wearing their masks. Some people have got the vaccinations of their choice. I am contagious. I have compost fever. Me and my youth have been spreading compost fever throughout Baltimore City through the variant of education. So I am contagious, so wanted to give you that disclaimer before I get started. My name is Marvin Hayes, and I'm the executive director for the Baltimore Compost Collective. We are a youth-led food scrap collection service. We serve about 15 different communities in Baltimore City. We hire youth from South Baltimore, from the Ben Franklin High School, and we train them in small-scale composting, and we train them also in entrepreneurial training. So we want to give opportunities for our youth where they can become the next environmental justice leaders for their neighborhoods. The Filbert Street Garden is located in a food insecure, food apartheid neighborhood where it takes the residents in Brooklyn, Curtis Bay about an hour to get to a market that's not filled with GMOs and processed foods. So I train youth in small scale composting, and we have been able to remediate the toxic soil at that garden that once had high levels of lead and metal, and we remediate that with compost. When you put compost into the soil, it sequesters carbon and puts carbon back into the soil. And when you sequester carbon and you have healthy soil, you create healthy vegetables and healthy produce for residents that live in areas where they do not have access to a market that has healthy foods or organic materials. So we provide young people with that opportunity.
Yes.
environmental justice leaders. They live in an area that's one of the most toxic areas in Baltimore City, where Baltimore City has one of the highest asthma and cancer rates in the country. In their community is 2 incinerators. One you may know that's located by the Horseshoe Casino that you may have thought it was the Baltimore welcome sign. You might even have called it a cloud maker. But it's an incinerator where 80% of Baltimore City municipal trash can be composted, recycled, or reused, but we're burning the trash. And when you burn trash, it creates high levels of carbon dioxide. When you bury trash in a landfill, it creates high levels of methane gas. So we are educating peers so they can educate their peers about this environmental injustice that's happening in their neighborhoods. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, can you see why I was excited? This is just amazing work, and I am so curious to hear more about how you started this journey, like why you chose composting, like what was there for you when you first started?
Well, composting chose me. I fell in love with compost, but I've always loved youth and my work with youth. I was asked to be a driver, and that the youth would pick these buckets up from people's front and they would take it back to this garden and they would put it through a process. And me being a youth program manager and youth mentor for years, I noticed that my young men weren't able to explain what they were doing. So I taught them how to do an elevator pitch. We were also profiled because we were in Federal Hill and some other neighborhoods in Baltimore City where a lot of people didn't look like us. So we were profiled. We were those people taking these buckets off of people's front and they put it in this van and I don't know what they're doing with it. So coming from Sandtown, Penn North, I've had to be able to switch the narrative. So I had to learn how to turn that negative into a positive. So when people were staring at us, we simply just asked them, do you compost? We're a youth-led food scrap collection service serving the amazing Filbert Street Garden, where we provide soil enhancer for residents that don't have access to green space. And from there, we started out with 5 customers. Now we have over 400 people supporting our process, and we're not dependent on a system because we've created our own system to not be able to not at the point where we can give our youth a living wage, but they have a fair wage. They're not at minimum wage, and we give them the opportunity so they can learn skills and support our youth. Because if we don't support our youth, who are we leaving the next leadership to? They need to be in environments like this where you can put them, may be uncomfortable with them first, but once they get situated and have an opportunity, you're amazing to see them grow. We have to lead by example and provide opportunities for our youth to thrive here in Baltimore City.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I'm happy that you started to touch on your work with the youth, because that's something that I do. It is the heart of my work, being able to advocate for youth to show up and be present in various systems and be in the rooms. Yes, some of those youth are here today. And so it's like the heart of my work. And so I'm curious about what strategies you have found along the way that have been helpful in like really engaging the youth, helping them stay focused, stay mindful. Like what things come up?
Yes, this is going to be a different type of interview. I am different. I'm going to bust out into poetry for you right now. We teach our youth to listen, raise their hands, and ask for permission instead of encouraging our youth, if they see a problem, to make a decision and take a position. As adults, we must take time to listen. Today's indomitable youth are impossible to subdue or defeat, but often not brought to the table to make it complete. We make decisions that impact their future, but seldom save them a seat. Words without action are just chitter-chatter. Today's youth took a stand to teach us, regardless to our race or color, that all humans matter. Impossible is the term that the youth before you, youth are the leaders of this food waste movement and must be a part if we want to see any improvements. We must share roles and responsibilities in order to unwrap our youth talents and abilities. Yearn to connect and not correct, and always motivate with respect. Facilitate, do not delegate. These are ways that adult leaders can participate and motivate. Foster collaboration and watch our youth exceed above all expectations. Show youth appreciation in tangible ways, but most important, don't be stuck in your ways. This should be the adult preamble. It is always important to lead by example. Enlighten and empower our youth and give all the youth the tools that they need to succeed, and our success as a human race is guaranteed. Lead on, my youth, lead on. If your ear is within my range, continue to use your imagination and innovation to help create positive social change.
I mean, am I the only one who needs a second to take that in? That is just, wow. That is so beautiful. And I love that you were talking about how we need to bring youth in, how we need to bring them into the table, actually give them the seat at the table. And I'm wondering, how are you doing that? What ways are you able to bring youth in? I mean, because I imagine there are many people here who work with youth and want to do those similar things. So how are you doing that?
So at the Baltimore Compost Collective, we thought it was very important to be able to support our youth. Yes, I want them to be composters. Yes, I want them to shut down their incinerator, but I also want to work with them with goal setting. So my youth composter, currently Mr. Kenneth Mars, started out with me when he was 15 years old. He grew his first tomato at Filbert Street Garden in Curtis Bay, and now he was working with the Be More Beautiful block captain, where he cleaned up the neighborhood and dealt with constituent complaints from 311 and helped to keep his neighborhood clean. And his supervisor thought it was important that he learned about composting. And also, when he had the opportunity to come to a workshop at Filbert Street Garden, I told him I was hiring. Within an hour, Kenneth had his resume and cover letter to me. Kenneth came to me when he was 16 years old and told me that he wanted to start his own photography business. Kenneth had his EIN number and LLC at 16 years old. His business is called Kenneth Captures. Please go on Instagram and check him out. Just a kid with a camera. Now he's a young man with a camera because he's been with me for 6 years. So we want to support our youth and let them know that we don't want to be dependent on systems and grants. So you're not a businessman, you're a businessman. So we're gonna use those cash crops and use the entrepreneurial skills that you learned through the Baltimore Compost Collective. My youth write grants. My youth come and do presentations. Kenneth had an opportunity, people not aware, Detroit shut down one of the largest, oldest incinerators in the country, but they did not have a composting infrastructure. So we are working with Detroit to help them to be able to create a community composting infrastructure. And Kenneth went along with me and was my co-facilitator. And 60 other youth he was able to train in small scale composting. So how empowering is that he is the gift that keeps on giving. He understands when you're blessed, you have to bless others. So just lead by example. Always lead by example and give youth their opportunity. When Kenneth had an opportunity to speak about the work that he's doing in South Baltimore and talk about the incinerator. When he was testifying for the city, he came to me and he said, Mr. Hayes, I didn't know it was going to be that many people. And he had his script all written down on his phone. And I said, Kenneth, put your phone down and just speak from your heart. Now, Kenneth has spoke at the USCC Composting Conference. He spoke at the Refed Food Waste Solution Conference. He spoke at City Hall to help testify. Now, Baltimore City has $4 million dedicated to the EPA for this first compost facility in East Baltimore, where we will divert trash from going into the landfills and incinerators, and we'll have an opportunity to hire youth. Give me the squeegee kids. Give me the guys that are doing the carjack, and let me give them an opportunity. It may not feel good, but it's good for them, and I'm going to give them that support and discipline and hold them accountable and give them the skills so they can turn that squeegee into a real business where when you pull up, you'll be able to cashless, fill the app out, you'll get your windows washed, the guys will have uniforms, let you know who they are. So as the city, we have to give our youth an opportunity. We just provide opportunities for our youth, and even if they're uncomfortable, still put them out there, and always be there to support them. Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm wondering if there are any specific challenges that you can pinpoint that would be helpful for us as a room to really learn from, and like how you overcame those challenges? Because I imagine that this isn't something that just popped up overnight. I know this was a lot of hard, dedicated work, and I imagine it is still a lot of hard, dedicated work. So,
Yes, it's very difficult to let people know that we are affected by the way that we deal with our trash here in Baltimore City and how it impacts neighborhoods that are low, that are disenfranchised neighborhoods that are very culturally, very mixed culturally. But one thing that they have is that they are poor. They put these facilities in neighborhoods. It's called greenlining, where they put these toxic institutions. So you'll have the same type of incinerator, landfill in New Jersey. You'll have in Virginia. How many people know that Baltimore County and Howard County trash gets burnt in Baltimore City? Will Howard County and Baltimore County allow Baltimore City to bring that trash and get burnt there? When I go to workshops to schools in Curtis Bay and Brooklyn, I ask two questions. One, what's your favorite fruit and vegetable? All the children raise their hands. They tell me mangoes, strawberries. Some love avocados, which is a fruit, because anything that has seeds is a fruit. But I also ask the second question. How many of you guys are affected by asthma or cancer? 95% of those students are affected by asthma or cancer. So it's so frustrated that the city believes that the monetary benefit of that incinerator. Baltimore gets $11 million, pays the incinerator $11 million to burn trash in those neighborhoods in Westport and Lakeland, Cherry Hill, Brooklyn, Curtis Bay. Then the city gets a kickback to bury the ash in the landfill. Johns Hopkins gets money for cancer and asthma treatment, cancer and asthma research, but they're burning their medical waste right in Curtis Bay, right across from the landfill. So how long will this environmental injustice last? How long will we continue to put monetary before our babies and our futures? So we have to, yes, I'm asking you to create 3 waste stations at your house and take your food scraps to the farmer's market, to the DPW drop-off centers, to your local community garden. Provide opportunities for youth where they can operate and run these programs so that we can end incineration and landfill usage in Baltimore and make sure that we have clear air, clean air for everybody, for everyone.
can you talk a bit about how partnerships and collaboration show up? Because I know that you are partnered with individuals within the community. And I mean, we are hopefully a bunch of partners and collaborators in this room. And so I bet we would all be curious to know how that has shown up in your work.
Yes, we are truly a collective. I cannot do this by myself. I think I've heard it echo 1,000 times since I've been here. It takes a village. So I may not have all the skills, but I know how to bring people together. So it's important that you have collab. And for my funders that are in this room, let's promote collaboration instead of competition. Let's make people work together, because together we're so much stronger. We're so much stronger. So we don't need competition. We don't need a grant that 30 people have to fight over $100,000. Let's work and find ways that we can be together and put together great teams where the point is not playing the center and the center is not playing the point, and you have opportunities where you can create development and you can create strong team members and have a great team. Mm-hmm.
I really admire that you brought up this idea of facilitating more collaboration instead of competition, because I think that's something that's very difficult. I know when I was first getting introduced into this peer role, I'm still very new in the peer role. That was one of the things that was the hardest for me, how siloed things felt and how much work I had to do in trying to get my name out there and bringing people together. And it's hard work, but I agree with you, though. It's stronger when we all come together. So I appreciate that you're doing that. And is there any specific collaborations that have been really helpful?
Yeah, so the Office of Sustainability and DPW have caught compost fever. So now you can drop off your organic material like your coffee grinds, your food and vegetable scraps, your coffee filters, your tea bags, your garden trimmings. You can drop those off at any of the DPW sites in Baltimore City. You can also drop your compost off at the Waverly Farmers Market and Jones Falls Expressway, where those scraps go to Paul, the hog farm, where we've been doing composting. So that creates that circle. The hogs eat the scraps. The butcher, takes care of the hogs, and then they get brought back to the farmer's market and sold. So we complete that zero waste circle. Also, I have amazing partnership with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, where we are going around teaching people the correct way and giving you all of the tools that you need for your composting toolbox so that you can be successful where you won't have urban rabbits. How many people know what an urban rabbit is? It's a Baltimore City rat, and you won't have any odors. So we're working with DPW. If you go to the DPW Growth Center, you can receive an enclosed green garden vessel composting system and give you the best practices for your home composting needs. We don't want any outsourced composting in Baltimore City because we don't want urban rabbits. Composting can help us stop having a rat problem and Baltimore's mascot being the rat, because it would eliminate those materials from going into the trash. 85% of Baltimore City municipal trash can be composted, recycled, or reused. So great partnerships with Baltimore City Schools, bringing in over 3,000 youth to educate them about composting and make vermiculture worm bins. If you are composting, you have compost fever, you know how much passion and how the smiles I see when I start mentioning the red wiggler worms. So you can get materials at Great Kids Farm to do such a great opportunity. If you teach your youth to compost when they're young, they'll always compost. So you could create a vermicompost or worm composting right at your house, and your worms will eat everything but your peppers and your citrus material. Everything else will go into your green garden earth system. And we're not cold composting in Baltimore or passive composting. We're giving it the right high nitrogen materials, high carbon materials, water and air, and you flip and aerate your compost. And when you flip and aerate, rats don't want to be in there. So you have to be an active composter. Just don't throw it in your backyard, because if not, you're going to have urban rabbits. So we try to make sure that we go out and educate people and give them the benefits of composting, let them know where their trash goes, what happens to it when it gets to its final destination, and how it affects people that lives in those neighborhoods.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the poetry, right? I mean, we gotta talk about the role of poetry, how it has shown up for you. And I also want to give you the space if there's any other type of poetry that you want to share, whatever you would like to talk about.
Without a doubt, my spoken word has gave me an opportunity to deal with my mental health issues. As a Black man, I don't feel heard a lot. And it gives me an opportunity and gives me a platform to be able to educate and edutain and teach people about composting. And everything is real. All the bad things that happen in my life help create these poetry to help it make better for somebody else. So just sharing my story, we have lost our land, but I am the setback is a setup for a comeback king. It has given me an opportunity to be able to support a number of gardens, to be a resource and support for them, to be bridge sites to help them with their composting. A lot of times programs fail because they have one person that's really ecstatic about composting and then they leave. So my goal is to train a trainer and do the composter soil builder program. So I wrote a piece that talk about my land being taken that's simply entitled that I just need some time to vent. So I'm gonna share that with you guys. Is that okay? Can I share that with everybody? All right, nice. Okay. We pick up compost on electric bikes and whips in an attempt to lower our carbon footprint and starve the incinerator bit by bit. Pardon me, but I need to vent. Our land was taken and we were asked to dip. A living wage and health insurance held over my head for me to keep a tight lip. When people are gossiping and whitewashing, those are some of the things that they skip. Decisions made by people who don't even live in the same zip. When you stand up against injustice, the label of angry Black person is what you get. Blackball because I said burning trash and organic material in the neighborhood is unfit? Where our asthma and cancer rate are higher than the cost of New York City rent? Where our community leaders take money and awards from the incinerator for their own benefit, and you're supposed to be silent and not mention it? False charges filed against me, but you know they had to acquit. One thing about the truth, it can't be bitten. Marvin and Kenny are tenacious, so you know we won't quit. We'll gorilla some land and compost till we get a permit. Ownership this time, no adopt a lot, no rent. Never in your wildest imagination did you think that a composter could spit. But composters are high in nitrogen like manure, so that mean that we the shit. On divine assignment to stop incineration and injustice, I was sent. The compost revolution may not yet be televised, so I had to Instagram it. Thank you.
I am like, wow, I'm curious, was there a specific moment that poem was created out of?
Yes.
I felt that.
Happy belated Mother's Day to all the mothers. I was going through something, and my mother knowing that she's Marvin Hayes' mother, I called her about 4:00 in the morning. I didn't do poetry. I needed a way to vent, to deal with my mental health in a positive way. And then my next poem that I'm gonna do for you, I called her about 4:00 in the morning, and she woke up out of her sleep the same way. How many people had those mothers that the light wouldn't go off until you came in the house? So that's my mom. And I told her this poem, and she said, Marvin, you go for it. You go for it, just slow it down a little bit and go for it, because she's always my best teacher and my best critic. This was my first poem. It'll be a long journey down environmental justice road. That smokestack creates cleaner, greener energy is what we were told. In order to shut it down, we must have unity. So I went on a composting mission with the youth to feed the soil and feed the community. While others took blood money from the incinerator, I remained the environmental OG and stayed to the code. Frustrated, locked myself in the garden, teaching the youth how to make that black gold. Being a voice for the voiceless was our goal. We did our research. Because we're poor, we gotta breathe in cold. When I think about it, I get infuriated and I ask you, why must our organic material be incinerated? Breathing in high levels of carbon dioxide and methane gas must be of the past. So I ask you, how long will this environmental justice last? We don't have much time. Climate change is happening fast. Composting is a member of this supporting cast. Great for the climate to help reduce harmful greenhouse gas. In my city, environmental racism is dominant, but when you add compost to the soil, it sequesters carbon and so great for the environment. So if your ear is within my range, let's continue to spread compost fever to help combat climate change. This is my first environmental justice poem, so it's just a taste. But remember, compost, a rhyme is a terrible thing to waste. Thank you.
I am so sad to say that we are coming up towards the end of this conversation. I know we could all just listen to this beautiful person talk on and on about the amazing work that you do, and I mean that from a true place. And I'm so grateful that you have been able to share this amazing initiative with us. And is there any advice or something that you would like to leave with folks that are in this room?
Yeah, so it's two things. Guys, don't use a cookie cutter approach when it comes to youth. That's why our school system is failing. Give them opportunities and give your clients opportunity to come outside and dig your hand in some compost and play with some red wiggler worms and the other microorganisms that are in. It is therapy, guys. I live in Penn North. I live in the biggest open air drug market in Baltimore City. But when I get to go to the garden and work with youth and macerate that compost and flip those piles and teach them how they can make a difference, even if it's just 1,500 pounds, we know that's a penny in the big source of all the Baltimore City waste, but to let them know that you can make a difference. And our young people can't be what they can't see. So they see me as a farmer, a composter, a beekeeper. So Provide those opportunities for your clients to get out. It is so therapeutic to grow, to put a seed in the ground, to add water to that. And once you taste a tomato that you grow yourself, you'll never want a store-bought tomato or okra or any of those things. We got to go back. Everybody has been composting. How many grandmothers had eggshells in their flower pots when they were coming up? So they were composting. How many grandmothers from the Eastern Shore put the crab shells in the garden and made fish hydrosafe, fish fertilizer? So we have to support our youth. So the next thing I want for you guys to do is make a 3 waste station at your house, one for your recycling, one for your compost, and one for your waste. And I want for everybody to repeat after me. Compost. Learn so you don't have to burn. Starve the incinerator. Feed the soil. And feed the community.